Whether you're on your journey to become financially free, you already are financially free and want to stay that way, or you're an advisor or coach helping wealthy clients, you're going to love today's episode. In fact, I would have given $1 million for the insight I'm going to share with you today. Not only would it have helped me on my journey to become financially free, it would have helped my wealthy clients. This is a game changer, so stay tuned. So hi and welcome, I'm Annette Ba'u. For over 30 years, I have been an advisor and a researcher of the top 1% and 2% of millionaires to learn what millionaires with amazing lives do differently. And now I'm providing you practical, easy to implement insights so that you can take your business, your life, and your wealth to the next level. And today we're diving into money mistakes. Oh boy, gosh, I just would have given anything to have learned what I'm going to share with you today. And I'm going to give you 5 of the biggest millionaire money mistakes that I have seen over the course of my career. So stay tuned. So please click subscribe and ring the bell so you get notified of episodes. All materials and intellectual property are copywritten by millionaireseries.com. The information we provide is not intended to replace any advisor or specialist or provide any investment, financial, tax, retirement, or any planning or healthcare advice. All participants agree to hold millionaireseries.com and its affiliates harmless for results achieved or not achieved, and all international copyrights are reserved. For today's show notes, go to millionaireseries.com/190. For all show notes, go to millionaireseries.com/WLI. Now, let's face it, the first thing you got to do if you want to become financially free is you've got to have a template, right? You got to have a template so you know where you're going. Today, we're talking about mistakes you need to avoid so you don't end up in some rabbit hole. But what you got to do beyond this is you've got to have a financial freedom plan. You can download my free financial freedom template at millionaireseries.com/FFT. That template is going to help you to really start creating your plan so that you can start getting really clear on what you want, you know where you're focused, and the rest is going to be history. So again, millionaireseries.com/FFT to download the financial freedom template. So the first thing that is such a big one is not paying attention to details. Boy, you know, one of the things that's really interesting is that most of us who are multimillionaires are not super detail oriented. Now, people who know me would say, oh my gosh, Annette, you seem so detail oriented. Well, I am from a perspective that I force myself to be, meaning I've got great systems as well as a great support team to be able to be really organized and to really pay attention to details. And obviously being a top advisor, you have to be detail oriented or you're going to have problems. So sometimes we're not wired that way, but we can become that way by who we surround ourselves with as well as what we do in our own practice. But some of the biggest disasters I have seen is where people are not paying attention to details. They're kind of like, this is what they want, they abdicate it, and they're not paying attention to what's happening. So what are some of the things that you can do like right now to change that? Well, the first thing you can do is have some type of database. If you have a business, you might want a CRM. If you don't have a business, you still want some type of vehicle that can track your contacts and it can track what needs to be done. So perhaps you meet with your CPA and you've got to get a few more tax files to them. How do you keep track of that? The reason I like a CRM is because it just, you can, if you don't finish it that day, you can just put it off to the next day or to the following day. My CRM pretty much dictates my day. I have everything in there from my personal commitments to things I have to get done for my business. Every Friday I drive about 30 minutes to pick up my son and go and have he has a coffee, I have a tea, and we talk for about 15-20 minutes and then I take him back because he's living on campus, and that to me is such an important time. I mean, it's just like we don't really talk about that much excitement, but it's just connecting with him. Same thing with date night with my husband. We've got to have those built into our calendar, otherwise they don't happen, especially if you are successful and you've got a lot going on. But on the other side, even if you don't, what I find is a lot of my retired clients are busier than I am. I can never get a hold of them. And so we just got to be aware of it. But having a CRM where you're keeping track of the details is really important. And it's important to even keep track of so that if your advisor's not or something falls through the cracks because they haven't followed through, you can be on top of it. So a CRM is really important. Another one is an accounting software. Now, I'm not going to recommend anyone company. I use a specific one. I think they are way overpriced, but having an accounting software where you can do profit and loss, meaning how much money you brought in, how much you had in expenses, as well as your balance sheet, how much money your net worth is versus your liabilities, really gives you a perspective of, are you moving that bar forward? We need to be more focused in on our balance sheet overall so that we can say, yeah, our net worth is growing. Obviously your P&L is very important, but having both of those is really important, and it's very helpful for taxes. Whenever you hire anyone, whether you're hiring an advisor, whether you're hiring somebody to just help you around your house, or you're hiring an assistant, you've got to make sure that whatever you delegate, you don't abdicate. The biggest mistakes I have seen is where people give somebody a responsibility and then they just go to sleep at the wheel, and it can be devastating. You want to make inspecting what you expect part of your daily, weekly, and even monthly to-dos. And the people I have seen get into such hot water and such financial problems are ones who don't do that. They're ones who basically say, I hate accounting, so I'm going to have somebody do it. Kind of like fingernails going down a chalkboard. Don't let that be you. All right, the next thing is abdicating. I mean, kind of interesting that we're talking about this, but one year I was at a convention and it was comprised of millionaire entrepreneurs, and I heard 3 different millionaire entrepreneurs share how they almost went bankrupt because they had delegated their accounting. They had basically delegated it and abdicated it. They did not inspect what they expected. And in at least 2 of the cases, it was because a person was saying they were paying their quarterly taxes, but they were actually taking the money. Oh my gosh, this is such a common problem. I have seen this over the years, or I should say heard of it, from so many different people. So we've got to be really aware of it. Now, I think it's really a good idea if you can delegate some parts of your accounting. What I found for me personally, now our situation is a little more complicated and we've got various LLCs. Some of our LLCs flow up into another LLC. So it is a little bit complicated, but what I found from a perspective of downloading activity, meaning downloading transactions, was that I was spending more time when I had somebody else doing it than when I just go do it. Because what was happening is they would categorize things incorrectly. I would have to go and have to say, wait a minute, what's this, what's this? Now that I do that, I do it in half the time that it took me before. So again, you got to look at your own time and say, okay, is this worth it? I just recently was talking with a business owner, and he had an accountant that stole $250,000 from him. Now he does all of his books. Now, I don't know that you want to go to that extreme. The big key here is you just got to be aware of your situation. You got to pay attention to the details, and you got to make sure that if you're delegating, you're not abdicating, and you'll have this one down to a T. Your CRM will also help, or your software to keep track of things. The next one is a really good one, but it's carryover of brilliance. And this is one that is so easy to fall into. Oh boy. You know, somehow it's so easy to think that because we become multimillionaires and we're doing so well in certain aspects of our life, that genius carries over into other areas. Now, sometimes it does, because sometimes we take the time to really become experts in that area. And I'll use for myself health. I figure I'm pretty knowledgeable in health. But am I as much of an expert at health as I am wealth? No, and I don't pretend to be. But the problem is that what I find sometimes happens is somebody's been successful in their business, and then they think because they've been successful with their business, now they're really successful with their managed money. And I'm going to give you an example, true case. So this person is very successful in their business. I mean, generating almost $1 million a year. And we were having a conversation about investments, and right now the market's been going a little bit sideways, as it does. It goes up, it goes down, it goes sideways. It happens. But he was talking about how he was like putting everything in cash, and he wanted it done that day, and on and on and on. I was listening to him and I was like, boy, that's a perfect example. Now, obviously, you got to make sure that wherever your money's invested, that it is based on your risk tolerance. And the one thing I know for sure is that whenever somebody says that they're aggressive growth risk taker, I'm always like, okay, let's wait and see what happens when the market drops. Because that's when you really truly find out if a person really is, right? It's easy to say I'm aggressive growth when you're making umpteen%. But when all of a sudden the market drops by 20 or 30%, not so many people are aggressive growth. you've got to be invested based on what your comfort is and based on your objectives. But what I find sometimes is that somebody thinks because they make great decisions in their business, they make great decisions with their money. And I mean, doctors, I'll pick on doctors. It's so true. And I just know, because not only do I know a lot of doctors, but in my course of my career, I've worked with a lot, is that a lot of times you'll see where they make the mistakes, they think because they're brilliant in being a doctor, they're brilliant at running a farm, or they're brilliant at managing their money. And I can remember one saying, he was in his late 60s, and he had done okay, not as great as he could have. He said, the smartest thing I could have done is got an advisor early in my career and listened to them. So again, just be aware of it. But just because somebody has brilliance in one area does not mean they have brilliance in the other. So be aware of that. All right, the next one, which ties to that, but it's lack of confidence. This is something that's so fascinating to me. One of the biggest challenges is when someone has become a multimillionaire and then they assume that because they know about this, they don't know anything about that. So it's kind of the opposite of your genius carrying over. It's kind of like you have knowledge or you wouldn't have been successful in this area, but now you think you have absolutely no sense in this. And the biggest ones are around money. And I'm going to give you two specific examples. When I wrote my book, If Only I Had Known, my fourth book, I interviewed a lot of people. I interviewed advisors, I interviewed attorneys, I interviewed women. And two of the ones that just stick out like, oh my gosh, 85 million was the guesstimated net worth. Somewhere just, it was under 100, but it was a lot. And she found out that she had a silent partner on her team when the check she wrote to her alma mater for $2 million bounced. And amazingly enough, it was her and her husband's CPA of 20 years. 20 years. The husband died, and now it was the widow. And because she was abdicating, wasn't paying attention, didn't think she knew anything, wasn't looking at it, didn't have anyone else there overseeing it, oh gosh, she ended up with not very much money. And I interviewed the advisor who had actually been hired to actually try to find the money. But that was a really devastating one. The next one, I interviewed the daughter, who was a psychologist. Her parents had around 20 million. Their goal was, after estate taxes, that each of their 5 children would get 2 million. So they wanted a net worth of 10 million. They got a call from one of the, I'm not going to say his name, but he is a basketball coach. You would know him. Saying, why are you selling your beachfront home in Southern California? And they're like, we're not selling our home. He's like, yeah, I'm going to buy it. They're like, no. They had found an advisor in Colorado that was recommended by 2 of their friends, CPA, attorney, as well as an advisor, financial advisor. And what he would do is he would protect the assets. But what he was doing is he was setting up a trust, having them put their assets in the trust. He was the trustee. Now what that tells me is they were not reviewing that trust document. They were just saying, okay, go, yeah, whatever you say. He was then selling it and pocketing the money. He got indicted, but he was a Russian national. And so he left the country and they never got their money back. It was devastating. They ended up keeping, I think, 1, maybe 2 homes, but it was just devastating. Now, I know a lot of people like to use family offices. And I'm not saying all family offices are bad, but my concern whenever you have everyone in one house, yes, you do save expenses, but if you're going to follow that format, you're going to use something like that, you've got to make sure that you've got somebody reviewing it. You cannot have everyone tied to the same objective of how they make money and no one independently looking at that. So if you are going to do something along those lines where you're going to use somebody that does all the services, you've got to make sure you have some type of outside source, because that's when I see people get into problems where there's no check and balance. So again, as I mentioned to you, whether you want to remain financially free, you want to become financially free, or you advise people to become financially free, the first place to start is the Financial Freedom Template. You can go to millionaireseries.com/FFT. You know, it's so funny. Most people want to be financially free. The reason most people aren't is because they don't do what they need to do. And a lot of them don't even know what to do. This template will help you. So again, millionaireseries.com/FFT to download the Financial Freedom Template. And then do the work, my friends. For today's show notes, go to millionaireseries.com/190. For all show notes, go to millionaireseries.com/WLI. There you have it. Millionaire money mistakes. Wasn't that easy? I'm Annette Bao, founder of millionaireseries.com and host of the Millionaire Insider channel. All international copyrights are reserved. Wasn't that difficult, right? We've got to get really clear, first of all, on what we want. Then we've got to make sure that we are paying attention to those details. A lot of us don't like the details. We're big picture thinkers. We want to have time to do what we want to do, but details are critical. As one of the attorneys I use says, the devil is in the details. You ignore the details, you're going to have problems. And then we've got to delegate, but we can't abdicate, right? We've got to inspect what we expect. We've got to understand that we may have brilliance in one area, it doesn't mean we have brilliance in every area. We got to be aware of that. And then we got to make sure that we have the confidence to know that if something doesn't feel right. One thing that was fascinating when I did research for my fourth book, If Only I'd Known, is the people that said, I just didn't really feel right about this advisor. I didn't really feel right about this CPA. I don't know what it was, but I just didn't really like them. But they ignored it. If you have a gut feel about somebody, like you don't have a good vibe, boy, take that to heart. That is what will save you from getting into a whirlwind mess. Now, that doesn't mean that the person tells you something you don't want to hear. There's a big difference there, and I want to talk about this. One of the things that I know why I've been so successful working with multimillionaires is because I don't tell them what they want to hear. And a lot of times I've been in the room and I've been the only one out of all the advisors saying, I think that's a mistake. And it was interesting. One of the people came to me afterwards. I was the only female, so it was just even awkward there because here I am, I'm young, I'm a female, and I'm telling what to do in this particular case. And he said, you know, Annette, I want to tell you the reason you're on my team is because you don't think like everyone else. You think outside the box and you have the confidence to tell me when you don't agree with me. That, my friends, is what you want. You want somebody that you like, but somebody that's also going to tell you how it is. And they're not just doing it just so that they stay on your payroll. They're doing it because they really care about you, your family, your objective, and your goals. You guys got this. So I want to tell you one other thing that I'm so excited about. We are transitioning to a podcast, and we're going to have a podcast for money, and we're going to have another podcast for financial advisors and financial coaches. So stay tuned, but I'm looking so forward to that, and you will love the content you get. Bye for now.